Gentlemen, it's been a while since we just talked ball, so this is going to be my full college football playoffs predictions. Let's get into it. I'm going to use my Photoshop magic for this because I couldn't find a good bracket predictor. First thing I want to say, my biggest shocker, I think, was SMU making it. I did not think SMU would make the playoffs, but they did. Second biggest shocker, it almost looks like Oregon was somehow punished for being the 1 seed. Now, I'll admit I don't know enough about seeding to understand exactly how this occurs, but Oregon almost undoubtedly has a tougher run to the national championship than, let's say Boise State, for example. Like, Boise State's gonna either play Penn State, who just lost to Oregon, or SMU, who just lost to Clemson. And then on the other hand, if you're Oregon, you're the 1 seed, you're the best team in the nation, and you have to either play Ohio State or Tennessee next round. That feels wrong. Frankly, if you're the #1 team in the nation, it shouldn't really matter who you play to get to the national championship. You should win, but I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Looks like Boise State's got a nice run. I mean, same with Georgia. Frankly, I'd rather be anyone except for Oregon or ASU. I would much rather be on this side of the bracket. Let's start with probably the easiest game pick for me, Texas-Clemson. To me, Clemson does not have a snowball's chance in hell. I really like Texas. I think they underperformed this year, especially against Georgia. That was their big knock on them. But there's not really a single team in college football who's outright that good. I think Oregon is rightfully the #1 seed, but I just don't see how Clemson gets past Texas. I do think that Texas does need to consider starting Arch, though. I think especially, in that Georgia game, that recent game, Texas-Georgia, SEC Championship, Quinn Ewers struggled a lot. And I know that's their guy, and Arch Manning's supposed to be the backup, and you want to have faith in your, true starting quarterback. You don't want him to lose confidence. But there were a lot of points in that Georgia game where I was like, bro, you gotta put someone else in. He's just not getting the job done. Also, today's sponsor is DoorDash, and DoorDash is my favorite delivery app. Whether it's groceries from the store or food from my favorite restaurant, DoorDash is always coming in clutch. Whenever I have a really long day recording, I love to use DoorDash to get an awesome meal delivered right to my front door. DoorDash is your door to more, so download the DoorDash app now and get almost anything delivered. And if you use the code Meags 2024, that'll get you 50% off, up to $10 on your first order of $15 or more. Also, you gotta be 21 or older to order alcohol, and it's only available in certain markets. So there's a link in the top of the description. Download DoorDash now, use that code Meags 2024, and enjoy the rest of the video. Now, I think that will play a bigger factor as Texas moves on further in the bracket, but I don't see this being a massive issue against Clemson. I think they beat Clemson pretty easily. So I've got Texas moving on right here. All right, let's go up to Tennessee OSU. Ohio State, in my opinion, is not beating the big game allegations. I've got Tennessee beating Ohio State here. This game is favored Ohio State by, it's like a 5-point margin. It's nothing crazy. I'm not gonna lie, I really like Tennessee. I am biased because I watched a game in Neyland Stadium this year, and I just got to see how crazy that atmosphere is. A lot of this depends on Nico Iamaleava, and I wasn't too impressed with him against Alabama, but frankly, I think Ohio State will find a way to choke a big game. And I think this will be the big game they choke. I actually think Ohio State has a better chance against Oregon than they do against Tennessee. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but I really do think they have a better chance, especially because they're two Big Ten teams. They see each other. It's easier to game plan. This is SEC versus Big Ten. I'm taking Tennessee here. Penn State, SMU. Honestly, I do have Penn State, but I don't think it matters because I think no matter who gets out of here is getting smacked by Boise State. I actually think Boise State is so legit. Boise State only loss was to Oregon. I can't tell you how frustrated it makes me to see people, these casuals in the fucking comment section, talking about who has Ashton Jeanty played. Who has Ashton Jeanty played? How about the #1 team in the fucking nation? He dropped 160 yards and 3 touchdowns on him. I know exactly who Ashton Jeanty's played. He played the Oregon Ducks. Like, I'm a casual, and you have to be either rage baiting or an obscene casual to think that Ashton Jeanty hasn't played good talent. It's not like he's not playing in the SEC. I get it. The argument is just dog shit, okay? And then at the top right, Notre Dame, Indiana. I'm sorry, but I think the Indiana magic is over. What Indiana did with the roster they had is actually unbelievable. And, it should be noted. They deserved a playoff spot. They got it. And I'm really excited for Indiana in the future of that program. They're not ready to beat Notre Dame right now. This is, to me, this is literally just a question of, raw talent. There is way too much talent on this Notre Dame team. I think Indiana is better coached. I think they have a better scheme. I don't think it matters. There's simply too many significantly better recruits on Notre Dame for Indiana to overcome it. So that takes us to the Rose Bowl being Tennessee, Oregon, the Peach Bowl being Texas, ASU, the Fiesta Bowl being Boise State, Penn State, and the Sugar Bowl being Notre Dame, Georgia. I think the biggest cakewalk out of these games is the Peach Bowl for Texas. Honestly, if you're a Texas fan and you're the 5 seed and this is your path, you have to be so excited. You take on Clemson first, and then you take on Arizona State. That's actually so spoon-fed, bro. Like you're an SEC powerhouse, and you play ACC Big 12 to get yourself potentially into the Orange Bowl. I don't think anybody has an easier path than Texas. Yeah, I don't think anybody has an easier path than Texas, and I don't think anybody has a harder path than Tennessee or Ohio State. But like, dude, if you're like 6 seed Penn State or 11 seed SMU, you're pretty geeked up too. I've got Texas winning this game. I'm like 15 minutes from Arizona State. This program was horrible the last 3 years. I think they were 3-9 every year for the last 3 years until this year. Cam Scatabo, I love him. I do think he should have been in the Heisman race, but he wasn't better than Genty. Honestly, this is the same argument I'd make here for Indiana Notre Dame. What ASU's done is very impressive. They've significantly outperformed what was expected of them. You don't have the talent to beat Texas in the college football playoffs. That's my opinion on it. I got Texas moving on. This is, dude, if you're the fucking 5 seed Longhorns, you are so excited about this. Rose Bowl, Oregon, Tennessee. I think Oregon's the best team in the nation for a reason. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here. Tennessee's run ends here. Oregon takes the dub, Dylan Gabriel. So that leaves the Orange Bowl to be Oregon and Texas. I understand. I'm not calling haymakers here, but I really like this. Now, Boise State, Penn State. The interesting thing about the Fiesta Bowl is I think if it's Boise State, Penn State, I think Penn State will be favored. I think so. If it's SMU, Boise State, I think they're going to favor Boise State. I have Boise State moving on past this game. This is kind of like an I would like to see. I think Boise State and Ashton Genty have been under so much scrutiny unfairly in the media. I think people are just being casuals on purpose and just being dicks. And I would love to see Boise State prove them wrong and have a spectacular season despite everybody claiming bullshit. Like, I don't know, this is a spite watch. I will spite watch so that Penn State or SMU loses this game so that Boise State can win it. I would also love to see Ashton Genty go for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, this will be a spite watch for me. It is. I will give a lot of credit to the argument that because of the talent that Boise State plays, it's hard to evaluate how good they are. They have one very good showing against Oregon, but they lost. That's like the most legitimate argument you can make for how much talent is at Boise State and what they are capable of. But you can also say at the same time, did they just have one really good fluke game? That's very possible. They didn't play enough talent to really evaluate them. I think that argument is fair. It's kind of like Vanderbilt. Like, Vanderbilt beat Alabama. That game was crazy, but Vanderbilt did not continue that streak of insane football play. They dropped some games they never should have dropped. So did Vanderbilt just play one lights out electric game against Bama, or are they actually that good? That's kind of what we got here with Boise State. Sugar Bowl, Georgia, Notre Dame. I think a lot of Georgia's like full playoff success hinges on Carson Beck. Carson Beck can't figure out if he's good or bad at football. Like, sometimes I'm looking at Carson Beck, I'm like, yeah, that is a top quarterback prospect in the nation. And then sometimes I look at Carson Beck and I'm like, dude, you could be playing for a Sun Belt team and I wouldn't even bat an eye. I don't know what it is with Carson Beck. I think at the end of the day in this Georgia Notre Dame game, I don't even think Carson Beck has to play that well. I think Georgia can be so well carried by their ridiculously star-studded defense, ridiculously star-studded offensive line and receiving core that Georgia can be just fine, even if Carson Beck plays poorly. But they won't be fine playing poorly in the national championship. I do think if Georgia makes it out of this, I mean, this side of the bracket is so much easier. I just can't believe how cakewalk this side of the bracket is. There's not a single team in here that realistically should beat Georgia. I get it. I mean, they're the 2 seed, right? They're the 2 seed, but like teams that I could see realistically beating Georgia, like it's possible. I think the teams that could beat Georgia are Tennessee, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas. And they're all on the other side of the bracket. I don't see Boise State beating Georgia. I don't see Penn State beating Georgia. I don't see Notre Dame, Indiana, or SMU beating Georgia. So like, I don't know. I don't get seeding very well. It is quite confusing. I understand that the top 4 ranked conference champions get a bye. That's why Boise State has a bye. That's why ASU has a bye, Oregon and Georgia. But like, damn, it worked out very favorably if you're a Georgia fan. And this leads us to the national championship. Oregon, Texas, Georgia, Georgia, Boise State. Who's making it out of this game? I've got Georgia beating Boise State. Finally, I've got Texas beating Oregon. The national championship is an SEC matchup between Texas and Georgia. I think the hardest game for me to evaluate here is Texas-Oregon. If the Orange Bowl comes down to Texas-Oregon, that is confidently a game that I will not be betting on. Now, if the Cotton Bowl comes down to Georgia-Boise State, I will be taking the spread, and I will be taking Georgia. To me, it's just a gigantic talent gap, and that's really hard to overcome in college football. Oregon-Texas, I think, is a well-matched up game. I've seen Quinn Ewers play like the Heisman. I've seen Arch Manning play like he could have been the Heisman if he played every single game. I don't know what Sarkisian's going to do back there with Texas. I think I was a little unimpressed with Oregon in the Big Ten championship. I think Penn State should never have been that good against Oregon. I think to some degree, it exposed Oregon a little bit. That's why I think Texas has got the edge here. I think Georgia, Boise State, it literally does, to me, it doesn't matter who Georgia's going to play. I don't see how Georgia chokes this. Whether they played Indiana or Notre Dame, they should win that ball game. Whether they played Penn State, SMU, or BSU, they should win that ball game. Georgia's just going to have to show up in the national championship if they want it. This would be a hell of a fucking rematch, too. How sick would it be if the SEC championship was Texas, Georgia, and then the national championship was Texas, Georgia? If I had to pick an alternate national championship, like if I had to pick something else, I think it would be Ohio State beats the allegations, wins big games. That would be pretty awesome. It also is, you know, I like to root for the Big Ten, and there's not too much Big Ten represented. Well, no, there is. Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana. I think I'd take Ohio State, Penn State, actually. All right. Now, pretend my bracket's not totally messed up. This is my true bracket. This is what I believe for the college football playoffs. But if I had to choose an alternate, it would be this. You have to ignore the rest of the bracket because this is not going to make any sense. This is my alternate national championship. I'm going to be honest, I don't think this is nearly as exciting for is this exciting? It's a Big Ten national championship, which is not something you're going to see a lot. This actually would be a pretty sick national championship. I think most people probably want to see Oregon, Texas, Georgia, but Ohio State, Penn State national championship. So this implies that Penn State beats Boise State and then beats Georgia or whoever makes it out of that top half. If it's Georgia, it'll be their toughest matchup. If it's Notre Dame or Indiana, they're very grateful. Ohio State, they've got a gauntlet. If Ohio State makes the national championship, I think they win it because they have that's such a gauntlet. You take on Tennessee and then you have to beat Oregon and then you have to beat most likely Texas. You would have earned the national championship at that point. I think the biggest potential upset is Clemson beats Texas. I don't see how they do it. I don't see how they do it. Or actually, Arizona State beating whoever comes out of here would be really, really cool to see. For being it is interesting though, for Arizona State and Boise State being the buys, I think they have some of the lowest odds to make the national championship. This is my true, just in case you skipped to the end and were super confused, this is my true bracket. Texas beats Clemson, then ASU, then Oregon to make the national championship. Tennessee beats Ohio State, then loses to Oregon. Notre Dame beats Indiana, then loses to Georgia. Penn State beats SMU, then loses to Boise State. Boise State takes on Georgia, loses, and your national championship is an SEC championship rematch. I gotta say, man, the video game certainly helped, but I really love college football this year. It's been a lot of fun. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed. I had to get you one of these. I thought it'd be really fun. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.